The cruelest financial trap in the world is not poverty, it is obedience. Because obedience can look responsible while quietly destroying your future. Wake up early, work hard, stay loyal, pay your bills, wait your turn. And somehow, after years of sacrifice, millions of people still lie awake at night, staring at ceilings they do not own, carrying stress they cannot explain, wondering why life still feels heavy even after doing everything correctly. That confusion is not accidental. Nobody taught you that wealth is psychological before it is financial. Nobody warned you that money listens more carefully to identity than effort. And nobody explained that the biggest difference between the wealthy and everyone else is not intelligence, education, or luck. It is permission. The 1% gave themselves permission to think differently long before they ever earned differently. Tonight, that changes for you. Welcome to Think Like the 1%. This audiobook is not about fantasy. It is not about pretending success is easy. And it is definitely not financial advice. This is about rewiring the way you see yourself, your value, your time, your discipline, and your relationship with money in a world designed to distract you from your own potential. Over the next chapters, we are going to uncover why some people remain trapped in survival mode for decades, while others quietly build freedom in the background. You will understand how wealthy minds think under pressure, how they protect their focus, how they use time differently, how they detach emotions from financial decisions, and why emotional discipline matters more than motivation. You will also confront uncomfortable truths. Truths about your habits. Truths about your environment. Truths about the identity you inherited without realizing it. Because the moment your identity changes, your standards change. And when your standards change, your life begins to move in a completely different direction. There is a line I want you to remember throughout this audiobook. Poor minds ask, "What can I buy?" Wealthy minds ask, "What can this build?" That single shift has created empires. If this audiobook resonates with you deeply at any point, take a moment to like the video or share where you are listening from. Not for algorithms, for awareness. Because sometimes the first act of transformation is admitting to yourself that you are finally ready to change. Chapter 1. The first prison is invisible. Most people never realize they are trapped because their prison has no bars. It has routines. The prison begins quietly. It begins the moment a child watches exhausted adults complain about money every night at the dinner table. It begins when fear becomes normal, when scarcity becomes identity, when survival becomes personality. You can always recognize someone who grew up emotionally surrounded by scarcity, even when they later earn more money. They panic when opportunities appear. They sabotage consistency. They feel guilty charging higher prices. They fear investing in themselves. They cling to familiarity, even when familiarity hurts them. Because the mind always tries to return to what feels emotionally safe, even if what feels safe is keeping you broke. A man can double his income and still think like someone afraid of losing everything. A woman can build a successful business and still secretly believe she is one mistake away from collapse. This is why wealth is not only external, it is nervous system training. Some people earn money but still carry poverty emotionally. And emotional poverty is dangerous because it creates self-destruction disguised as comfort. Think about how many people earn more only to spend more immediately. Not because they need to, because they need relief. They are exhausted emotionally, burned out mentally, empty internally. So money becomes emotional anesthesia. A new car, another package at the door, another expensive dinner, another dopamine hit, temporary relief pretending to be success. But the wealthy understand something most people never learn. Comfort can become addiction, and addicted minds rarely create freedom. The truth is, many people are not financially poor. They are psychologically unmanaged. Their emotions decide their purchases. Their insecurity decides their lifestyle. Their ego decides their spending. Their loneliness decides their priorities. That is why somebody earning $50,000 can quietly become wealthy, while somebody earning $500,000 stays trapped in financial anxiety. One person uses money intentionally. The other uses money emotionally. And emotional spending is rarely about the object itself. It is usually about identity. A watch that says, "I matter." A luxury car that says, "I finally made it." Designer labels covering internal insecurity. Expensive lifestyles masking deep exhaustion. But real wealth is quieter than social media taught you. Real wealth often looks boring at first. It looks like restraint, patience, silence, delayed gratification. It looks like somebody sitting alone at a desk on a Friday night learning skills while everybody else searches for distraction. And that is where many people lose. Because distraction is now an industry. Every app wants your attention. Every notification wants your focus. Every platform wants your emotions reacting constantly. A distracted mind becomes easy to control. And controlled people rarely build extraordinary lives. The wealthy protect their attention differently because they understand attention is currency before money ever becomes currency. Whatever controls your attention eventually controls your future. That is why some people spend 8 hours building someone else's dream, then spend 5 more hours numbing themselves online, and then wonder why they feel disconnected from their own potential. Their life force is leaking slowly every day. Not through one massive mistake, through thousands of tiny unconscious decisions. And the frightening part is this: most people never pause long enough to notice. They live reactive lives. Wake up, react, scroll, consume, stress, escape, repeat. Years disappear that way. One of the saddest moments in life is realizing you spent your best years distracted from your own becoming. The 1% think differently because they understand something early. Your future is built in private before it is ever seen publicly. Long before the money arrives, the mindset appears. Long before the success appears, the discipline appears. Long before the confidence appears, the standards appear. That is why wealthy thinking often feels lonely in the beginning. Because growth separates you from old emotional patterns before it rewards you externally. You start saying no more often. You stop needing constant validation. You become more protective of your energy. You begin thinking long-term while others chase immediate relief. And people around you may not understand the shift immediately. Some may even resent it, because your discipline becomes a mirror reflecting their avoidance. There is a reason some friendships become uncomfortable when you start growing. Your growth silently asks others difficult questions about themselves, questions they may not be ready to answer. So do not be surprised if your evolution feels isolating sometimes. A seed grows underground before anybody sees the tree, and the early stages of rewiring your life often happen invisibly. Late nights, quiet sacrifices, new habits nobody applauds, learning when nobody notices, healing old beliefs privately. This is where wealth truly begins, not in your bank account, in your standards. A wealthy mindset says, I do not need to look successful. I need to become stable, capable, free, and freedom requires emotional maturity. Because if your emotions control your impulses, somebody else will always control your finances. That is why the wealthy train patience aggressively. They know impulsive people become predictable consumers. Think about modern culture carefully. Everything pushes urgency. Buy now, watch now, react now, consume now, compare now. But wealth is often built by people who learned how to pause. Pause before spending. Pause before reacting. Pause before quitting. Pause before following the crowd. That pause changes lives. A calm mind makes better financial decisions than an emotional one ever will. And maybe this is the first realization you truly need tonight. You do not need to become somebody else to build wealth. You need to stop betraying yourself emotionally. Stop abandoning long-term goals for temporary comfort. Stop outsourcing your self-worth to appearances. Stop spending money trying to impress people equally lost, because some of the people flexing online are drowning privately. Debt, anxiety, pressure, performance success instead of building peace. Never confuse visibility with stability. The wealthiest people in the room are often the calmest, not the loudest. And once you understand that, your entire relationship with money begins to shift. You stop chasing status. You start chasing alignment. Alignment between your habits and your future. Alignment between your decisions and your values. Alignment between your income and your identity. Because eventually, money amplifies who you already are. If you are undisciplined with little money, more money magnifies the chaos. If you are intentional with little money, more money magnifies the freedom. This is why rewiring matters first. A powerful income without emotional control becomes self-destruction with better branding. And in the next chapter, we are going to uncover one of the deepest hidden reasons people stay financially stuck even when opportunities are everywhere around them. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with the voice they hear inside their own head every single day. And once you recognize that voice, you will never hear your thoughts the same way again. Dear friends, we've just started working on this channel, so we'd really appreciate your support. Please like the video and leave a few words in the comments. It'll really help us promote it. We'd be very grateful. Let's keep going. Chapter 2. Your identity has been negotiating against you. There is a private conversation happening inside your mind every single day. Most people never question it. They simply obey it. That voice tells them what they are capable of, what they deserve, how much risk they can tolerate, how visible they are allowed to become, how wealthy they are supposed to be. And after enough repetition, the voice stops sounding like programming. It starts sounding like truth. That is how invisible limits are built, not through facts, through repetition. A person who heard money is stressful. Their entire childhood often grows into an adult who unconsciously avoids financial responsibility. Someone raised around constant criticism may later sabotage opportunities because success feels emotionally unsafe. A child who watched exhausted parents trade time for survival may unconsciously believe struggle is the normal price of existence. And if struggle becomes identity, peace starts feeling unfamiliar. That is why some people destroy stable relationships, why they abandon good opportunities, why they panic when life finally becomes calm. Chaos feels like home to a nervous system trained inside instability. And wealth requires stability, not perfection. Stability, the ability to think clearly under pressure, the ability to delay emotional reactions, the ability to stay focused while others spiral. This is why emotional self-mastery is one of the highest financial skills in the modern world, because opportunities rarely disappear as quickly as emotional control does. One impulsive decision can destroy years of progress. A wealthy mindset understands this deeply. The 1% are not emotionless people. They simply learned not to let emotions drive every decision. There is a difference. Fear still visits them. Stress still reaches them. Doubt still appears. But they do not surrender leadership of their lives every time discomfort enters the room. That is where most people lose themselves. They think discomfort means stop. But discomfort is often evidence that growth has finally begun. The gym burns before the body changes. Business feels uncertain before momentum appears. Investing feels uncomfortable before patience compounds. Discipline feels restrictive before freedom arrives. The wealthy understand that temporary discomfort can create permanent transformation. The average mind avoids discomfort immediately and unknowingly chooses long-term suffering instead. That is the trade most people make without realizing it. Temporary comfort, permanent frustration, and modern life makes this trap worse, because now discomfort can be escaped instantly. Bored, scroll, anxious, consume, lonely, distract yourself, insecure, perform confidence online. Every emotion now has a shortcut escape route. But escaping emotions is not the same as healing them. And unhealed emotions eventually leak into finances, relationships, health, and self-worth. This is why some people keep earning more while feeling emptier. Their external life improves while their internal world stays unmanaged. The truth is, money does not automatically solve emotional confusion. Sometimes it magnifies it. If you feel lost without money, you may feel amplified pressure with it, because wealth increases responsibility, and responsibility reveals character. A wealthy mindset is built slowly through emotional honesty. Honesty about habits, honesty about patterns, honesty about avoidance. You cannot heal what you refuse to confront. And maybe one of the hardest truths is this: some people do not actually want freedom yet. They want relief. There is a difference. Freedom requires responsibility. Relief only requires escape. That is why temporary pleasures become so addictive. They offer emotional interruption. But interruption is not transformation. Transformation requires sitting quietly with yourself long enough to admit what needs to change. And most people avoid silence because silence reveals truth. You can learn a lot about someone by observing what they do when life becomes quiet. Do they think, reflect, create, plan, or do they immediately search for stimulation? Constant stimulation weakens self-awareness, and self-awareness is one of the most profitable skills you can develop. Because once you become aware of your emotional patterns, you stop living automatically. You begin choosing intentionally. You notice how stress affects spending. You notice how insecurity affects ambition. You notice how exhaustion affects discipline. You notice how certain people drain your focus. Awareness changes everything. A wealthy mind pays attention not only to money leaving the bank account, but energy leaving the body. Because burnout creates expensive decisions. Exhausted people overspend. Emotionally drained people self-sabotage. Disconnected people chase status symbols, hoping to feel important again. But real confidence feels calmer than performance. Real confidence no longer needs constant display. There is a reason truly successful people often become quieter over time. They stop trying to prove themselves to strangers. They become obsessed with protecting peace instead. And peace is one of the most underrated forms of wealth in existence. Imagine waking up without panic in your chest. Imagine opening your phone without anxiety. Imagine making decisions from clarity instead of survival. That changes the quality of a human life. A wealthy mindset is not only about accumulating money, it is about reducing internal chaos. Because chaos steals focus, chaos steals consistency, chaos steals long-term thinking, and the world profits heavily from your distraction. If your attention is fragmented, your potential becomes fragmented too. That is why the wealthiest people protect their mornings aggressively. Before emails, before notifications, before the world enters their nervous system, they think first. Because whoever controls the beginning of your day often controls the direction of your life. Most people wake up emotionally invaded. Bad news, social media comparisons, financial anxiety, arguments online, information overload. And then they wonder why they feel mentally exhausted before noon. Your brain was not designed to absorb endless noise without consequence. The wealthy understand this. That is why they intentionally create mental environments that protect clarity. Silence, reading, walking, thinking, writing, learning. Not because these things are trendy, because clear thinking creates leverage, and leverage changes everything. One good idea can earn more than 10 years of exhausted labor. One disciplined investment can outperform years of emotional spending. One powerful skill can completely alter a family's future. This is why wealthy people become obsessed with skill acquisition. They know income follows value eventually. The world changes fast now. Artificial intelligence is reshaping industries. Remote work changed geography forever. Attention has become monetized. Information moves faster than ever. But despite all this technological change, human psychology remains surprisingly similar. Fear still destroys potential. Ego still ruins discipline. Impatience still delays wealth. And perhaps the biggest modern disease is comparison. People compare lifestyles without understanding sacrifices. They compare visible results without seeing invisible discipline. Social media created the illusion that everybody else is moving faster than they are. But comparison destroys clarity because it disconnects you from your own path. A wealthy mindset understands timing differently. Some seasons are for learning. Some are for healing. Some are for building. Some are for harvesting. You cannot rush internal growth, and rushing wealth often creates fragile success. There are people making millions while privately collapsing emotionally. Never envy outcomes without understanding the cost attached to them. Some people traded peace for status, health for money, presence for validation. Real wealth should improve your quality of life, not imprison you inside pressure. That is why emotional maturity matters so much. Without it, success becomes another form of suffering. And maybe tonight, you are beginning to realize something important. Your future is not only waiting for better opportunities, it is waiting for a better version of you. A version capable of handling greater responsibility, greater focus, greater patience, greater emotional control. Because opportunities often arrive after identity evolves, not before. The wealthy think in decades while most people think in weekends. That single difference creates entirely different lives. One person sacrifices the future for temporary pleasure. The other sacrifices temporary pleasure to build the future. And at first, both lives can look identical until time reveals the truth. Time always exposes priorities. Eventually, if this message is resonating with you deeply, write down one belief about money or success that you know no longer serves you. Sometimes transformation begins with naming the pattern honestly. The frightening thing about limiting beliefs is not that they exist. It is that people defend them. I'm just not good with money. People like me never get ahead. I missed my chance. It's too late. I'm not smart enough. I don't have connections. These phrases sound harmless, but repeated long enough, they become identity. And identity quietly controls behavior. A person who believes they are bad with money avoids learning financial skills. A person who believes success belongs to others hesitates during opportunities. A person who believes they are unworthy unconsciously sabotages momentum. This is why rewiring matters first, because your mind acts according to the story it believes most deeply, and stories can be rewritten. Slowly, painfully sometimes, but absolutely. You are not trapped by your past forever. You are not doomed by your upbringing forever. You are not permanently defined by old environments forever. But change demands awareness first. You must notice the voice before you can challenge it. And in the next chapter, we are going to expose one of the most dangerous habits silently stealing people's futures every single day. Not laziness, not lack of intelligence, fragmented attention, because the modern world has trained people to crave stimulation so aggressively that many can no longer sit alone with their own thoughts long enough to build anything meaningful. And once attention becomes fractured, discipline becomes nearly impossible. That realization changes everything. Chapter 3. The attention economy is feeding on your potential. A distracted person rarely becomes dangerous. That is why the modern world constantly fights for your attention. Not because your attention is small, because it is powerful. Every empire in history wanted control over land. Modern empires want control over focus. And most people surrender it willingly every morning before they even leave bed. They wake up and instantly absorb noise, messages, headlines, videos, opinions, arguments, advertisements, comparison, stimulation. Their brain never gets a moment of stillness. And without stillness, clarity disappears. You cannot build a focused future with a fragmented mind. This is one of the hidden reasons so many people feel emotionally exhausted today, even when they are technically doing less physically than previous generations. Their nervous system is overloaded constantly. Too much information, too much comparison, too much emotional stimulation. A mind flooded with noise cannot hear intuition clearly, and intuition matters more than many people realize. Some of the biggest decisions in your life will not arrive with certainty. You will have to feel your way forward through ambiguity. But if your attention is constantly hijacked, your internal guidance becomes weak. The wealthy understand something deeply uncomfortable. Most people are being psychologically conditioned every single day without noticing it. Conditioned to consume, conditioned to react, conditioned to compare, conditioned to stay mentally overstimulated and emotionally dependent. Because dependent minds are profitable. A person disconnected from themselves buys more impulsively, seeks more validation, escapes discomfort faster, questions themselves more often, and insecurity fuels industries. Think about how much modern advertising quietly whispers the same message. You are incomplete until you buy this. You are behind. You are less attractive, less important, less successful. So people chase symbols hoping to feel whole. But wholeness cannot be purchased externally. That is why somebody can own luxury everything and still feel restless alone at night. Because peace and status are not the same thing. The 1% learn to separate appearance from reality early. They understand that many people spend money trying to look wealthy, while actual wealthy people often spend time trying to become wiser. That distinction changes trajectories. One person invests into temporary perception. The other invests into permanent capability. Capability compounds. This is why skills matter more than image. A person with strong communication skills, emotional intelligence, discipline, adaptability, and financial awareness can rebuild after failure. But someone whose entire identity depends on external appearance collapses when circumstances shift, and circumstances always shift eventually. Markets change, technology changes, industries change, identity built only on appearances becomes fragile. This is why the wealthy often obsess over learning privately, quiet reading, studying systems, understanding psychology, analyzing patterns. They know the outer world rewards internal preparation eventually. Meanwhile, many people are unknowingly destroying their focus capacity. Their attention span weakens year after year. They cannot sit with one idea for long, cannot read deeply, cannot think patiently, cannot stay present without stimulation. And shallow focus creates shallow results. The frightening part is how normal this has become. People now consume more information in 1 week than previous generations consumed in months. Yet many feel more confused than ever because information alone does not create wisdom. Reflection does. And reflection requires silence. There is a reason wealthy thinkers throughout history protected solitude aggressively. Not isolation from humanity, isolation from noise. Because in silence, you can finally hear yourself clearly. Your real priorities emerge there. Your fears emerge there. Your desires emerge there. Most people avoid silence because it removes distraction from unresolved emotions. But silence is where transformation begins. A person who cannot sit quietly with themselves for 30 minutes will struggle to build anything requiring long-term discipline. This is why the wealthy train focus intentionally. Focus is not only productivity. Focus is emotional resistance, the ability to stay aligned with your future despite constant distraction. That is rare now, very rare. Modern culture rewards urgency and reaction. Wealth rewards patience and precision. Different rules entirely. Imagine two people beginning with the same income. The first spends every evening consuming random content, comparing themselves online, emotionally reacting to headlines, chasing entertainment to escape exhaustion. The second spends those same evenings learning high-value skills, studying money, strengthening discipline, improving health, protecting mental clarity. At first, nothing dramatic separates them, but time compounds invisible habits. 5 years later, their lives no longer resemble each other. One wonders why life feels stagnant. The other quietly built leverage. That is how transformation usually happens. Quietly at first. The world celebrates dramatic success stories but ignores the invisible years that created them. Nobody applauds consistency while it is happening. Nobody sees the evenings spent learning instead of escaping, the weekends sacrificed for growth, the lonely moments of self-discipline. But those moments matter enormously. Every disciplined hour becomes future evidence of self-respect, and self-respect changes behavior. When people truly respect themselves, they stop negotiating with destructive habits so casually. They become more intentional with sleep, food, relationships, time, money, attention, because they finally understand something powerful. Your life is shaped less by dramatic decisions and more by repeated patterns. Daily routines quietly become destiny. This is why wealthy people often seem boring compared to chaotic lifestyles glorified online. They repeat winning behaviors consistently. Read, train, think, build, invest, recover, repeat. Nothing glamorous about it, but consistency outperforms intensity almost every time. An emotionally reactive person can have moments of brilliance and still destroy long-term progress through inconsistency. Meanwhile, disciplined people keep moving quietly even without motivation. And motivation is one of the most misunderstood forces in modern culture. People wait to feel inspired before acting. But wealthy minds understand action often creates motivation afterward. You move first. Feel later, not the other way around. Waiting until you feel ready is one of the fastest ways to remain stuck for years. Because readiness is usually created through repetition, not emotion. Confidence is built through evidence. Evidence is built through action. That is why discipline creates freedom eventually. Not immediate pleasure. Freedom. The freedom to choose your life instead of constantly reacting to it. And perhaps that is what many people secretly want most. Not endless luxury, relief. Relief from financial anxiety. Relief from emotional exhaustion. Relief from constantly feeling behind. But relief cannot be built on avoidance forever. At some point, you must confront reality honestly. How are you spending your time? What consumes your attention? Who influences your thinking? What habits are quietly shaping your future? These questions matter because attention compounds exactly like money does. What you repeatedly focus on eventually shapes identity. If you focus constantly on negativity, fear expands. If you focus constantly on comparison, insecurity expands. If you focus consistently on growth, capability expands. Attention is emotional nutrition, and most people are mentally consuming junk all day long. Imagine eating processed food every hour for years and expecting physical strength. That is what many people do psychologically. They consume outrage, gossip, envy, shallow entertainment, and endless distraction daily. Then wonder why clarity feels impossible. A wealthy mindset protects mental nutrition aggressively, not from arrogance, from awareness, because what enters your mind repeatedly becomes thought patterns eventually. And thought patterns become behavior. This is why environment matters so much. Your environment is not only physical, it is digital too. Who you follow online shapes your thinking. What you consume shapes your standards. The conversations around you shape your ambition. Some environments normalize excuses, others normalize growth. Choose carefully. There are people who spend every conversation complaining about life, but never changing their behavior. They romanticize struggle instead of escaping it. And if you remain inside environments where dysfunction feels normal long enough, you begin adjusting downward emotionally. That is dangerous. Because human beings adapt quickly. Adaptation can save lives, but it can also quietly trap potential. The wealthy intentionally expose themselves to higher standards regularly, not to feel inferior, to expand possibility. One powerful conversation can alter ambition permanently. One book can shift identity. One mentor can collapse years of confusion. Never underestimate the environment shaping your subconscious daily. And maybe tonight, something is already shifting inside you. Maybe you are starting to recognize how much of your exhaustion came not from lack of potential, but from scattered energy, scattered attention, scattered priorities, scattered emotions. A scattered mind struggles to build a focused future, but awareness changes everything, because once you see the pattern clearly, you cannot fully unsee it again. If this chapter resonates with you, pause for a moment after listening and ask yourself one honest question. What has been consuming my attention more than building my future? That question alone can change a life. Because in the next chapter, we are going to uncover one of the deepest differences between wealthy minds and survival minds. Time perception. The way people see time determines nearly every major financial outcome in their life. And most people are unknowingly trading years of their future for temporary emotional comfort without realizing the cost until it is far too late. We're so glad you decided to watch our video. We're also really curious to know which cities around the world are watching our videos. Could you let us know which city, or at least which country, you're from? We always read every comment under our videos carefully. Thank you. Chapter 4. Poor people spend time. Wealthy people multiply it. One of the quietest tragedies in modern life is watching people destroy years of their future for moments of temporary emotional relief, not because they are evil, not because they are incapable, because nobody taught them how valuable time actually is. Most people think money is their greatest resource. It is not. Time is. Money can return. Time never negotiates. And once wealthy thinkers truly understand this, their relationship with daily life changes permanently. They stop asking only, "How much does this cost?" They begin asking, "What is this costing my future?" That question changes everything. A wealthy mind sees time differently from a survival mind. A survival mindset thinks, "How do I get through today?" A wealthy mindset thinks, "How do I build something that still benefits me years from now?" Completely different psychology. One lives reactively, the other strategically. And this distinction quietly shapes entire destinies. There are people who spend 20 years chasing immediate comfort while unknowingly sacrificing long-term freedom. Every impulsive purchase, every wasted evening, every distracted year, every postponed skill, every ignored opportunity. Tiny decisions compound silently, and time compounds faster than most people realize. The frightening thing about wasted years is that they rarely feel wasted while they are happening. That is why regret arrives so suddenly later in life. One day, people wake up and realize they spent years busy, but not intentional, exhausted, but not fulfilled, entertained, but not evolving. And deep down, many already know this. They feel it during quiet nights, long drives, moments after the distractions fade. That uncomfortable feeling is not weakness. It is awareness trying to wake them up, because human beings were not designed only to consume life. They were designed to build one. The 1% understand something emotionally difficult very early. Every yes costs something invisible. Say yes to distraction, and you say no to focus. Say yes to impulsive spending, and you say no to future leverage. Say yes to endless entertainment, and you say no to self-development. Life is constantly asking for trade-offs, but most people only notice the visible costs. The wealthy pay attention to invisible costs too. What habits are costing them mentally? What environments are costing them emotionally? What routines are costing them years? That awareness creates power, because once you see time clearly, you stop wasting it casually. You become more selective, selective with conversations, selective with obligations, selective with where your energy goes. And energy matters more than many people realize. Some people technically have enough time to change their life, but they are emotionally drained every day by chaos, drama, negativity, digital overload, unhealthy relationships, financial anxiety. Exhaustion destroys consistency. That is why wealthy minds protect peace aggressively. Peace is productive. A calm mind thinks better, decides better, builds better. This is one reason emotionally mature people often outperform naturally talented but emotionally chaotic people over long periods of time, because consistency beats intensity repeatedly. The world celebrates dramatic effort, but wealth is usually built through repeated discipline over long stretches of time. A person who invests steadily for 20 years often outperforms somebody chasing shortcuts constantly. A person who reads consistently for years develops mental leverage others never notice until much later. A person who trains their focus daily eventually becomes extremely rare in a distracted world. This is why patience has become a competitive advantage. Most people cannot stay committed long enough anymore. They want immediate validation, immediate success, immediate certainty. But meaningful growth often feels invisible in the beginning. That is the difficult part. The early stages of transformation rarely look impressive externally. Nobody sees your mindset changing. Nobody sees your discipline strengthening. Nobody sees your standards rising. Yet those invisible shifts eventually create visible outcomes impossible to fake. There is a reason wealthy people think in decades, because long-term thinking reduces emotional decision-making. A person obsessed with immediate pleasure becomes easy to manipulate, but someone connected deeply to a long-term vision develops emotional resistance. They stop reacting impulsively. They stop chasing every trend. They stop comparing constantly, because they understand something most people forget. Life is not a race against strangers. It is a relationship with your own potential, and potential dies slowly through neglect, not instantly. Neglect looks harmless at first. One wasted evening, one ignored opportunity, one distracted year. But eventually, neglect compounds, and compounded neglect becomes regret. This is why intentional living matters so deeply. The wealthy do not accidentally create structured lives. Structure protects focus. Think carefully about this. When your days have no intentional structure, emotions begin controlling behavior. You work according to mood, spend according to feeling, rest without recovery, consume without awareness, and emotional inconsistency creates unstable results. A wealthy mindset creates systems because systems reduce emotional chaos. Morning routines, investment habits, learning schedules, health practices, focused work blocks, not because wealthy people are robots, because systems create freedom. Freedom from constantly renegotiating discipline. Most people exhaust themselves deciding whether to do what they already know matters. The wealthy simplify decisions. They automate productive habits emotionally. This is one reason routines matter so much. A strong routine protects your future from temporary moods. And moods are unreliable. Some mornings you will feel inspired. Other mornings you will feel uncertain, tired, distracted, doubtful. But disciplined systems continue moving even when emotions fluctuate. That consistency becomes powerful over years. Very powerful. Imagine improving your financial intelligence 1 hour every day for 5 years. Improving communication skills consistently for 5 years. Building emotional control consistently for 5 years. You would become almost unrecognizable compared to your previous self. That is how real transformation occurs. Not through one motivational moment, through repeated alignment. And perhaps one of the biggest lies modern culture sells is the idea that success should happen quickly. Quick money, quick fame, quick results. But quickly built things often collapse quickly too. A wealthy mindset values durability, skills that last, habits that last, character that lasts. Because sustainable success requires emotional stability underneath it. Otherwise, success becomes stressful to maintain. And there are many people secretly trapped inside lifestyles they can no longer emotionally sustain. They built an image before building inner stability. So now they perform success while privately exhausted. Never build a life that forces you to betray your peace daily. That is not freedom. Real wealth should create more alignment, not more emotional imprisonment. This is why the wealthy eventually become obsessed with leverage. Leverage means creating results beyond direct labor alone. Investments, businesses, skills, networks, systems. They understand trading hours endlessly has limitations. Time is finite. And once you realize time is your most precious asset, your decisions become sharper. You stop wasting years trying to impress temporary people. You stop tolerating environments draining your spirit. You stop spending entire weekends recovering from lifestyles misaligned with your future. Because eventually, maturity teaches you something powerful. Not every opportunity deserves your life force. Some opportunities only offer distraction, disguised as excitement. A wealthy mindset asks, will this move my life forward long term? That question alone eliminates countless destructive habits. And perhaps this chapter is confronting you with something uncomfortable right now. Maybe you already know where your time has been leaking. Scrolling, avoidance, endless consumption. People who drain clarity. Habits keeping you emotionally foggy. Awareness is painful before it becomes empowering. But honest awareness is the beginning of freedom. You cannot change patterns you refuse to notice. The good news is this: time can still become your ally again. One disciplined year can redirect an entire future. One focused season can rebuild confidence completely. One decision to stop living reactively can alter generations after you. Never underestimate what aligned effort can create over time, especially in an era where most people remain distracted for years. Focus has become rare. Patience has become rare. Emotional discipline has become rare, and rare qualities become valuable. The 1% are not always the smartest people, but they often think differently about time. They stop asking, how can I escape discomfort right now? And start asking, what future am I creating through today's behavior? That shift alone changes trajectories. If this part resonates with you, write down one habit that has quietly been stealing your future without giving anything meaningful back. Sometimes clarity begins with brutal honesty, because the next chapter will uncover one of the deepest emotional traps keeping people financially stuck even after they begin improving their habits: the addiction to external validation. And until a person learns how to separate self-worth from public approval, true freedom remains almost impossible. If you like this audiobook, please give it a like. It will really help us promote the video. Chapter 5. The need to be seen is making people broke. Some people do not buy things because they love them. They buy them because they are terrified of feeling invisible, and that fear silently controls more financial decisions than most people will ever admit. The truth is uncomfortable. A large percentage of modern spending has very little to do with necessity, and almost everything to do with emotional signaling. Signaling success, signaling status, signaling importance, signaling worth, because deep down, many people are starving for recognition. Not money, recognition. They want proof that they matter. So they perform success publicly while privately drowning in pressure, and social media intensified this psychological trap beyond anything previous generations experienced. For the first time in human history, people now compare their everyday reality to millions of carefully edited highlight reels every single day. That changes the nervous system. Slowly, quietly, dangerously. You begin feeling behind without realizing why. You begin questioning your pace, your appearance, your achievements, your income, and eventually, many people stop building lives they genuinely want and start building lives that photograph well instead. That is one of the saddest forms of self-abandonment. Because external validation is endless. No amount of praise permanently heals internal insecurity. The wealthy eventually learn this. That is why emotionally mature success often becomes quieter over time. The need to constantly display fades. The obsession with proving dissolves, because real confidence no longer needs an audience every moment. And this changes financial behavior dramatically. A person addicted to validation spends emotionally. A person grounded internally spends intentionally. Massive difference. The validation-driven mind constantly asks, how will people perceive me? The wealthy mind asks, how will this decision affect my future? Different psychology entirely. One purchases emotionally, the other strategically. And perhaps you have already felt this tension yourself. Maybe you bought something expensive, hoping it would make you feel more accomplished. Maybe for a few days it worked. Then normal life returned. The excitement faded. The emptiness quietly reappeared. Because objects cannot permanently repair identity wounds. That is why people trapped in emotional insecurity often chase bigger and bigger symbols, hoping the next achievement will finally create peace. But peace built on external approval is fragile. The moment praise disappears, self-worth collapses again. This is why wealthy thinking requires emotional independence, the ability to approve of yourself privately, without applause, without attention, without immediate recognition. That is rare strength now, especially in a culture where visibility has become currency. Many people no longer ask, is this meaningful? They ask, will this get attention? Completely different orientation toward life. And attention addiction quietly destroys focus. People begin performing productivity instead of building results, announcing goals instead of pursuing them, talking constantly instead of developing quietly. But the 1% understand something deeply. Silence protects momentum. There is power in building privately, because public validation can become emotionally addictive before actual discipline develops. A person posts about goals, receives praise, feels accomplished emotionally, without building anything substantial yet. That dopamine shortcut is dangerous. Real growth often happens invisibly for long periods, and emotionally mature people learn how to tolerate invisibility while improving. That ability changes everything. Can you continue learning when nobody notices? Can you continue building before results appear? Can you continue staying disciplined without constant praise? Those questions separate temporary motivation from real transformation. The wealthy think differently about identity itself. They understand identity is built through evidence, not fantasy. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself repeatedly. You become disciplined by acting despite discomfort repeatedly. You become financially stable through repeated, intentional decisions. Identity follows action more than affirmation. This is why wealthy minds respect consistency so deeply, because repeated behavior creates internal trust, and self-trust is priceless. A person who trusts themselves moves differently through life. They hesitate less, recover faster, commit deeper, because they have evidence of their own resilience. Meanwhile, people trapped in external validation often lose themselves emotionally, trying to maintain appearances. Imagine how exhausting it is to constantly perform a version of yourself that is disconnected from reality. Pretending success while feeling panic internally. Pretending confidence while feeling lost privately. Pretending peace while emotionally overwhelmed. Many people are living this way silently, especially now. And perhaps this is why genuine authenticity feels so refreshing when you encounter it. Realness has become rare. The wealthy eventually understand something profound. The goal is not to look rich. The goal is to become free. Free emotionally, free financially, free mentally. And freedom often looks quieter than performance culture expects. Sometimes wealth looks like leaving your phone untouched for hours because your nervous system no longer craves constant stimulation. Sometimes wealth looks like walking calmly through a grocery store without financial anxiety tightening your chest. Sometimes wealth looks like sleeping peacefully because your life is aligned with your values. Never reduce wealth to possessions alone. Possessions without peace create elegant prisons. There are people living in expensive homes while emotionally exhausted every day. That is not success. Real success expands your nervous system's ability to experience calm, because eventually, emotional peace becomes more luxurious than status symbols. And perhaps maturity itself is partly realizing how much energy gets wasted trying to convince strangers you are doing well. A wealthy mindset redirects that energy inward, toward growth, toward discipline, toward healing, toward long-term alignment. Because external applause cannot replace internal stability, and internal stability compounds into every area of life. Relationships improve. Decision-making sharpens. Financial behavior becomes calmer. Opportunities become easier to recognize. Clarity creates leverage, but clarity requires honesty. You must ask yourself difficult questions sometimes. Who are you trying to impress? Why? What are you hoping approval will heal? Those questions matter because insecurity is expensive. Very expensive. It causes people to overspend, overcommit, overperform, overexplain, overwork for validation instead of purpose, and eventually they burn out emotionally. The wealthy protect themselves from this trap by defining success privately first, not according to trends, not according to strangers online, not according to comparison, according to values. What kind of life actually creates peace? What kind of work feels meaningful? What kind of relationships create stability? What kind of future feels aligned? Those answers create grounded ambition instead of desperate ambition, and grounded ambition lasts longer. There is a huge difference between wanting success to express your gifts and wanting success to prove your worth. One creates fulfillment, the other creates exhaustion. This is why self-awareness matters so much. Without it, people unconsciously spend years chasing things they never truly wanted. They inherited somebody else's definition of success, maybe from parents, culture, social media, old environments. But inherited ambition without reflection can lead people far away from themselves emotionally. And no amount of money compensates for losing connection with your own life. The 1% who sustain success long-term usually become highly intentional about emotional energy. They avoid constant drama, avoid chaotic environments, avoid relationships built on performance, not because they are cold, because they understand emotional chaos destroys clarity, and clarity creates opportunity. That is why emotionally regulated people often outperform emotionally reactive people over decades. A reactive person destroys momentum repeatedly. A regulated person protects momentum consistently. And momentum is one of the most powerful forces in life. Small aligned actions repeated long enough become extraordinary outcomes eventually. This applies financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually. Everything compounds. Even insecurity compounds if left unexamined. That is why healing your relationship with self-worth matters deeply for wealth building. Because if you secretly believe your value depends on appearances, money will constantly leak trying to maintain identity performances. But once self-worth stabilizes internally, decisions become calmer. You stop chasing emotional relief through spending. You stop needing strangers to validate your existence. You stop performing success and start building peace. That shift changes everything. If this chapter resonates with you, take a moment later tonight and honestly ask yourself, what am I still trying to prove and to whom? Some answers may surprise you, because in the next chapter, we are going to uncover why fear keeps millions trapped financially even when opportunities are directly in front of them. Not fear of failure, fear of becoming different. And once you understand how identity fights growth subconsciously, you will finally understand why so many people sabotage themselves right when life begins improving. Chapter 6, Your Old Identity Will Fight Your Future. One of the strangest moments in personal growth happens when life finally starts improving. And instead of feeling peaceful, you feel uncomfortable. Not because success is bad, because your nervous system is unfamiliar with it. People think self-sabotage is laziness. Sometimes it is fear, not fear of failure, fear of transformation. Because transformation changes relationships, changes routines, changes identity, changes comfort zones. And the human mind clings to familiarity even when familiarity hurts. That is why some people stay trapped in environments they secretly outgrew years ago. The known pain feels safer than unknown possibility. A struggling job can feel emotionally safer than starting a business. A toxic relationship can feel emotionally safer than loneliness. Financial instability can feel emotionally safer than responsibility. Because every new level of life demands a new version of self. And identity change feels threatening at first, especially if your old identity was built around survival. Think about how many people unconsciously introduce themselves through limitations. I'm bad with money. I'm just not disciplined. I've always been anxious. I never finish things. I'm not entrepreneurial. Notice the language carefully. These are not observations anymore. They became identity statements. And identity is powerful because human beings instinctively protect consistency with who they believe they are, even when that identity creates suffering. That is why change feels emotionally difficult long before it becomes physically difficult. Your subconscious mind wants familiarity. Your future requires evolution. And those two forces often collide violently. A person begins improving financially, then suddenly overspends emotionally, begins building discipline, then binge escapes into distraction, begins healing emotionally, then reconnects with chaotic environments. Not because they are weak, because the nervous system tries to return to emotional familiarity. This realization changes everything, because now you stop seeing self-sabotage as proof you are broken. You begin recognizing it as unconscious identity protection, and once you recognize the pattern, you can finally interrupt it consciously. The wealthy understand something most people never realize. Your life changes when your standards become stronger than your moods. That is where transformation stabilizes, not when motivation appears. When standards rise, a wealthy identity says, we do not abandon long-term goals for temporary emotions anymore. That sentence alone can rebuild a life, because emotional impulsiveness destroys more futures than lack of opportunity ever will. The world is filled with intelligent people trapped by emotional inconsistency. They know what to do, but they cannot sustain alignment long enough. And sustainability matters. Anybody can feel inspired temporarily. Anybody can be disciplined for 3 days. Anybody can start. The rare skill is continuing, especially when progress becomes invisible, especially when results slow down, especially when nobody applauds. That is why wealthy minds become emotionally detached from immediate validation. They stop asking, do I feel motivated today? And start asking, what does the future version of me require today? Different mindset entirely. One is emotional, the other is intentional. And intentional people build very different lives over time. There is a dangerous modern belief that life should constantly feel exciting. But excitement is not the same thing as fulfillment. In fact, many meaningful things feel repetitive while they are building. Saving money consistently feels repetitive. Learning deeply feels repetitive. Training the body feels repetitive. Building a business feels repetitive. But repetition creates mastery, and mastery creates freedom. Most people sabotage themselves because they romanticize dramatic change while underestimating quiet consistency. They want transformation without identity reconstruction, but identity reconstruction is the entire process. The wealthy do not merely earn differently. They think differently under stress, react differently to setbacks, spend differently emotionally, value time differently. And these shifts happen internally long before visible wealth appears externally. That is why wealthy thinking often feels lonely at first, because your priorities begin changing before your environment understands the shift. You stop enjoying constant gossip. Stop enjoying endless distraction. Stop needing approval from people disconnected from your future. And this creates emotional friction. Sometimes friends misunderstand your focus. Family questions your discipline. Old environments pressure you to remain familiar. because your growth silently disrupts the emotional contracts people had with the older version of you. Not everyone benefits from your evolution. That truth hurts sometimes. But maturity means understanding that outgrowing certain dynamics is part of transformation. You cannot build a peaceful future while remaining emotionally attached to every old identity. Growth requires shedding old habits, old patterns, old coping mechanisms, old definitions of self. And shedding can feel painful because the brain interprets uncertainty as danger. But uncertainty is often where expansion begins. Every successful person eventually had to become unfamiliar to themselves temporarily. The confident person was once awkward. The disciplined person was once inconsistent. The financially stable person was once confused. Transformation always looks messy in the middle. Do not judge your entire future based on transitional discomfort. A caterpillar dissolves completely before becoming something else. Human growth often feels similar emotionally. There are seasons where you no longer fit your old identity, but have not fully stabilized into your new one yet. That space feels uncomfortable, but it is sacred, because this is where conscious rebuilding occurs, and rebuilding requires honesty. You must stop lying to yourself about behaviors keeping you trapped. The wealthy become radically honest eventually. They track spending honestly, track habits honestly, track emotional triggers honestly. Because clarity creates control. Avoidance creates stagnation. Imagine trying to improve your finances while refusing to look at your bank account honestly. Impossible. The same applies psychologically. You cannot heal patterns you constantly rationalize. That is why self-awareness is one of the highest forms of power. Self-aware people catch emotional spirals faster, catch destructive habits earlier, catch excuses before excuses become identity again, and excuses are seductive. Because excuses temporarily protect ego, but they quietly destroy potential. A wealthy mindset values truth over comfort, even painful truth, especially painful truth, because truth creates leverage, and leverage changes lives. The moment somebody fully admits, my habits are the problem, my distractions are the problem, my emotional inconsistency is the problem, their power returns instantly, because now the solution becomes possible. But as long as blame dominates awareness, growth remains delayed. This is why personal responsibility feels heavy initially, but liberating eventually. Responsibility means my future is influenced by my decisions now. That realization can feel terrifying, but it is also empowering, because it means your future is not completely fixed. You are not imprisoned permanently by your past mistakes, not trapped forever by old environments, not doomed because of previous confusion. Human beings can evolve dramatically. But evolution requires repetition. The brain rewires through repeated evidence. Every disciplined action sends a message. Every intentional decision reinforces identity. Every moment you choose growth over impulse strengthens self-respect. And eventually, your new identity begins feeling natural, not forced. That is where momentum becomes powerful. At first, discipline feels difficult. Later, indiscipline feels uncomfortable. Huge difference. The wealthy eventually reach a point where protecting their future becomes emotionally satisfying. Saving feels good. Learning feels good. Building feels good. Peace feels good. Not because they became superhuman, because identity shifted, and identity always shapes behavior more deeply than temporary motivation ever will. This is why your environment matters so much during transformation. You need exposure to people whose standards elevate your thinking, people who normalize discipline, normalize growth, normalize emotional maturity, normalize long-term thinking. Otherwise, old environments pull you backward emotionally. Human beings unconsciously mirror the expectations surrounding them. That is why certain rooms expand your ambition while others shrink it. Choose carefully. Some environments feed your excuses, others feed your evolution. And evolution requires courage, not loud courage, quiet courage. The courage to stay committed when results feel slow. The courage to become different from who you used to be. The courage to disappoint people who benefited from your stagnation. That kind of courage changes generations. If this chapter is hitting you deeply, pause later tonight and ask yourself one difficult question. What parts of my old identity am I still protecting even though they are hurting my future? That answer may become the beginning of your next life. Because in the next chapter, we are going to uncover one of the greatest hidden advantages wealthy people develop over time: emotional detachment from chaos. Because the ability to remain calm while others panic creates opportunities most people never even notice. And in an emotionally reactive world, calm has become a form of power. Dear viewer, we would really be grateful if you could share your ideas on how we can improve our videos in the comments. Thank you very much. Chapter 7. Calm people see opportunities. Panicked people miss. When fear enters a room, most people lose access to clear thinking almost immediately. Their breathing changes, their focus narrows, their emotions accelerate, their decisions become reactive. And in those moments, life quietly separates people, not by intelligence, by emotional control. Because chaos exposes mindset faster than comfort ever will. Anyone can appear confident when life feels easy. Anyone can sound disciplined when circumstances cooperate. But pressure reveals identity. The wealthy understand this deeply. That is why emotional regulation becomes one of their greatest hidden assets. Not because they never feel fear, because they train themselves not to obey fear automatically. There is a huge difference. The average person reacts emotionally first and thinks afterward. A wealthy mindset pauses first. That pause creates power. A pause before impulsive spending. A pause before panic selling. A pause before emotional arguments. A pause before abandoning long-term goals during difficult seasons. That pause alone protects fortunes, both financial and emotional. Think about what happens during uncertainty, economic downturns, business setbacks, unexpected failures, market volatility. Most people panic emotionally because their nervous system was never trained for instability. So they react short-term. But wealthy minds understand that emotional overreaction destroys long-term positioning. This is why some people lose opportunities during difficult seasons while others quietly build massive leverage. One reacts emotionally, the other stays observant. And observation matters enormously. A calm mind notices possibilities hidden inside chaos. A reactive mind notices only danger. That difference creates entirely different futures. History repeats this pattern constantly. During crises, emotionally reactive people rush toward survival thinking. Emotionally grounded people analyze carefully, not recklessly, carefully. They ask, what opportunities exist here? What skills suddenly matter more now? What problems need solving? Where is attention shifting? Where is fear distorting reality? Because every major shift in history creates both panic and opportunity simultaneously. And emotionally disciplined people position themselves differently during uncertainty. This applies financially, professionally, personally. Imagine two people losing a job unexpectedly. The first collapses emotionally, begins spiraling mentally, consumes negativity constantly, feels powerless. The second allows themselves to feel fear honestly, but stays intentional. They assess, learn, adapt, rebuild strategically. Both experienced pain, but one remains psychologically available for opportunity. That changes outcomes dramatically. The wealthy are not immune to stress. They simply understand something most people ignore. Panic reduces intelligence temporarily. You cannot think clearly while emotionally flooding your nervous system constantly. This is why emotional discipline matters so much, not because emotions are bad, because unmanaged emotions distort perception, and distorted perception creates poor decisions. A fearful person sees impossibility where opportunity may exist. An insecure person sees rejection where growth may exist. An impatient person abandons long-term rewards too early. Emotional management protects perspective, and perspective shapes destiny. There is a reason disciplined people often appear calmer during difficult seasons. It is not always confidence. Sometimes it is familiarity with discomfort. They train themselves gradually, early mornings, delayed gratification, financial restraint, focused habits. All these small acts strengthen emotional endurance. And endurance matters more than occasional motivation. The world glorifies intensity, but stability builds empires. A wealthy mindset values emotional steadiness because steady people recover faster. Recovery speed matters enormously in life. Everybody experiences setbacks, losses, failures, embarrassment, unexpected detours. The difference is recovery. Can you stabilize emotionally after disappointment? Can you regain focus after mistakes? Can you continue building after temporary losses? Those abilities compound over time. Emotionally reactive people lose months or years inside setbacks. Emotionally disciplined people process pain without surrendering momentum completely. That is rare strength, especially today. Modern culture encourages emotional impulsiveness constantly. Instant reactions, instant outrage, instant opinions, instant emotional broadcasting. But instant emotional expression is not always emotional intelligence. Sometimes it is emotional dependency. The wealthy understand the value of emotional restraint, not suppression. Restraint. They know not every emotion deserves immediate action. That understanding alone prevents enormous damage, because temporary emotions often create permanent consequences. One impulsive investment, one emotional purchase, one destructive argument, one panicked decision. Lives change quickly that way. And perhaps one of the biggest hidden advantages wealthy people possess is this. They learned how to think during emotional storms. Most people cannot. They become consumed by immediate feelings. But wealthy minds ask, what is actually true right now? Powerful question. Because fear exaggerates, ego distorts, anxiety predicts catastrophes that may never arrive. A calm mind separates facts from emotional noise. And that ability creates leverage in every area of life. Imagine navigating relationships calmly while others escalate emotionally. Navigating business decisions calmly while competitors panic. Navigating financial uncertainty calmly while others make desperate decisions. Calm becomes strategic advantage. This is why inner peace is not weakness. It is power under control. And power under control creates stability. Stability attracts opportunity. People trust emotionally stable individuals more. Opportunities flow more naturally toward emotionally grounded people. Leadership grows naturally around calm energy, because calm nervous systems create safety, and safety creates influence. This applies even inside families. Children absorb emotional regulation from adults around them. Teams absorb emotional energy from leaders around them. Relationships mirror nervous system patterns constantly. Your emotional state affects more people than you realize. That is why self-mastery matters beyond personal success. Emotionally disciplined people create calmer environments for others too. And perhaps this is where true wealth begins expanding beyond money entirely. A wealthy presence, a grounded energy, a stable mind. Those qualities cannot be purchased instantly. They are built through repetition, through conscious regulation during difficult moments, through choosing clarity instead of impulsiveness repeatedly. And the truth is, emotional regulation often feels invisible externally. Nobody applauds you for not reacting impulsively. Nobody celebrates every mature decision privately. But invisible discipline creates visible futures eventually. The wealthy understand delayed consequences deeply. They know today's emotional reactions shape tomorrow's reality. That is why they protect emotional clarity aggressively. Sleep matters, health matters, environment matters, recovery matters. Because exhausted people make emotional decisions faster. And emotional decisions are often expensive. A tired mind spins differently, responds differently, thinks differently. This is why burnout destroys so much potential. People think burnout is only physical exhaustion. Often it is emotional overload. Too much stimulation, too much pressure, too much unresolved stress. A wealthy mindset learns how to recover intentionally instead of escaping constantly. Huge difference. Escaping numbs temporarily. Recovery restores strategically. One delays problems. The other rebuilds strength. That distinction matters enormously over years. There are people who spend every weekend escaping life instead of restoring themselves for growth. Alcohol, distraction, overconsumption, emotional avoidance. Then Monday arrives and they feel emptier again, because escape is not recovery, and recovery is essential for sustained success. The wealthy understand sustainability deeply. They know constantly operating from emotional chaos eventually destroys performance. So they create systems protecting clarity. Walks without phones, quiet mornings, reading, training, reflection, intentional conversations. Not because these habits look impressive online, because these habits stabilize the mind. And stable minds build stronger futures. If this chapter resonates with you, ask yourself honestly, what situations make me emotionally reactive most often? That answer reveals where growth is waiting. Can you continue building after disappointment? Can you remain patient during slow seasons? Can you maintain vision while results remain invisible temporarily? That requires meaning. Otherwise, emotions dominate direction constantly, and emotional instability destroys consistency. The wealthy eventually understand a difficult truth. Every meaningful life requires sacrifice. Time, comfort, certainty, convenience. Something must be exchanged. The difference is whether the sacrifice creates long-term alignment or long-term regret. Some people sacrifice their future for temporary comfort. Others sacrifice temporary comfort to build a future. One path compounds peace eventually, the other compounds frustration. And perhaps tonight, this audiobook is forcing you to confront what your current sacrifices are actually producing. Are your habits building freedom? Or are they building escape? Because every repeated action shapes identity eventually. This is why meaningful routines matter. Morning reflection, focused work, exercise, learning, intentional rest. These habits stabilize the nervous system around growth, and growth requires stability, especially in a distracted world constantly pulling attention away from deeper purpose. The wealthy protect purpose carefully because purpose organizes life. Without purpose, people become emotionally reactive, directionless, easily influenced. But purpose sharpens decisions. You stop wasting energy proving yourself constantly. Stop chasing every opportunity emotionally. Stop saying yes to things disconnected from your future. Purpose simplifies, and simplicity creates peace. There is tremendous power in knowing this matters, this doesn't, this aligns, this distracts. That clarity reduces emotional exhaustion enormously because confusion drains life force. Many people are tired not only because they work hard, they are tired because they live misaligned. One identity internally, another identity externally. That split creates chronic tension, meaning heals that tension gradually. You begin living more honestly, more intentionally, more consciously, and conscious living changes everything. Financial decisions improve, relationships improve, health improves, focus improves, because alignment reduces inner conflict. The wealthy eventually become highly protective of this alignment, not from selfishness, from wisdom. They know peace is difficult to rebuild once constantly violated. And perhaps the greatest irony is this: many people chase money hoping it will bring peace, while repeatedly abandoning the habits that actually create peace internally. Stillness, self-respect, discipline, honesty, purpose. Those qualities create grounded wealth. Without them, success often becomes emotionally unstable. If this chapter resonates deeply with you, pause later tonight and ask yourself, what kind of suffering is actually worth enduring for the future I want? That question reveals purpose, and purpose changes endurance. Because in the next chapter, we are going to uncover one of the greatest hidden differences between wealthy people and everyone else: their relationship with discipline, not as punishment, not as restriction, but as self-respect in action. And once you understand discipline through that lens, your entire relationship with consistency will begin changing permanently.